coming to talk, to listen to us talk. I'm very, very lucky to have these three people sitting on a panel with me. Three people that I have been fortunate enough to come into contact with within the fitness industry, which just seems to be an ever-expanding bubble of people in London and the nation, and everyone seems to be into fitness now. But these three people, I think, are of particular interest to me, and have had an impact on my own journey and things that I've done with my career and with my own kind of goals. So I wanted to bring them under one roof, which is really, really exciting for the first time, and pitch to them some questions that I think will honestly help you. At the end, we're going to get you guys, if you have any, to ask some questions too. First of all, I want to introduce them. So for those of you that don't know, first of all, I have Luke sitting here. Luke is my trainer. So I've never had a personal trainer in my life until I met Luke, and I didn't think that I needed one really until I started to work as a PT and found that I just sort of fell out of love with my training a little bit, just because I was training loads of other people and I lost motivation for actually doing things for myself and actually my own training. And I think it's often, I see people write, you know, oh, it's easy for those that work in the fitness industry, but actually when you're in a gym 24/7, to then get the motivation to train yourself is probably one of the most difficult things, or I found anyway. So I was introduced to Luke through Amy actually, and we have worked together, and he's written me a very good program, which I'm doing at the moment. Luke is a former pro athlete, so he is got loads of experience in the field, but he also has an MSc in biomechanics. He's been in the industry for 20 years. He's head of trainer education at Third Space, which is a gym we have in London. Trainer to, I don't know if we have any people that are interested in football, but he trains Mesut Ozil, which I think is a great big deal, and other athletes such as Stuart Mika. He is listed in EV Standards as one of the top 5 trainers in London, and something that I am really interested in, something that I think drew me to Luke initially, was the fact that he's developing something called PRI, which I'm sure that you'll be able to explain a little bit better later, but outside of the USA. So that's the PRI stands for Postural Restoration Institute, and it's something that I've become really interested in and that I've worked with Luke on. Johnny's sitting over there. Gave my first ever job as a PT at the Lomax Gym, which he founded and is the owner of. He also has a master's in English literature, which I think is quite cool.
I talk a lot.
I know how to talk well. He's worked with and has helped secure 3 gold medal positions for Great British athletes. Won an Excellence Award for contribution to occupational health when he was working with Transport for London, helping with obesity and stress management. He's successfully built 4 boutique gyms in London, so he's got a lot of experience within the industry, and was the first pay-as-you-go and boutique operator. And he specialises in trauma rehab, which I think is very cool, and advanced sports nutrition as well, and is a consultant for brands such as Under Armour and TRX. So much, I'm literally like, we are not worthy. And then in the middle, we have my good friend and the online editor of Women's Health magazine, Amy Hopkinson. Amy edits for a magazine described as the ultimate manual for a smarter, healthier lifestyle. I'm sure you guys have all read Women's Health, and I think it's an amazing go-to for people that are in the fitness industry. She is a soon-to-be level 3 PT, very soon, and also a Lululemon ambassador, where she runs her popular monthly event called the Wellness Mindset, which is something that I've personally done, and which is an amazing event. So if you can get tickets to that, I would highly recommend it. So, without further ado, I've now introduced all of these amazing people, and you're probably all sitting there thinking, they've got a lot to tell us. So I'm going to start by basically kicking off the conversation in a positive light, because I think the fitness industry can be full of a lot of negativity and a lot of people trying to get one up on each other. And actually, I think that we need to start on a positive note, because that's how I want us to progress. So I wanted to start by asking each of you to tell me something that you love about the fitness industry. Johnny, start. What do you love? What is one thing that you could say is positive?
Well, because I'm now sort of more in the business than I'm of fitness than in the sort of, I mean, I still do about 20, 30 hours of training with clients a week, and I'd love to do more and do less of the business to not particularly good at business. The thing I really like about it is that people try, like just doing the thing and trying. I had a lady from the press this morning who came into our gym wanting to write some very negative things about about this lovely industry that we're in. You know, on the one hand, obesity is going up, and on the other hand, you know, boutique fitness is driving an enormous amount of anxiety in people. But I think if you just kind of cut to the maths, and whether you're doing very specific, highly technical stuff like Luke, or whether you're writing about it in the media, or whether you're popular enough to let people like this, you know, be motivated, I think just getting up and trying it, the first thing. So the people that come to me, that's what I love about it. What I do with them after that's kind of like irrelevant.
I think you're right. I think, like, for me personally, the person that just steps into a gym, that's a big thing.
Or just steps out off the sofa actually, before they've even got to the gym.
Yeah.
Because now you can get to them through your Facebook. I mean, I can't personally. No one listens to me, but you know, before they get to me, they listen to you.
I think that's a really good thing.
Or they read Amy.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's an amazing thing that people are just embracing exercise now, and just actually, you know, having the confidence to just give it a try. And you know, that might not necessarily be the first time they try it, they are a success at it. God, I can't talk today. A success, but at least they're trying. And I think
confidence
that's
is the big thing. I think that's the big word you use there, because it's really, you know, when I started out, and you know, we've been around a while. Like, you know, I started in like East Coast of Australia, where everyone was meant to be fit and healthy and what have you, and even there, people were, you know, didn't go into a gym. This is a room full of women. You guys wouldn't have gone into a gym where there was weights. You just wouldn't have done that. That just was unheard of. Let alone go in and then talk about how you're doing a lunge one way versus another. I mean, it's a different world now, and that confidence has come through things like the social media. And what have you. But it does have it. It does. You know, I'm sure we'll come on to that.
We'll come on to that for sure. Amy?
I think for me, it's quite similar to that. But fitness, you don't have to be good at anything.
Yeah.
So like sport, yes, if you want to win a match, and obviously you know about this, you have to be good. But fitness is about you and investing in yourself. So it doesn't matter how many burpees you can do or how much weight you can lift, because it's relative to who you are as a person and your body and your own goals. So I think for me, that's my biggest thing.
Very good. Very good point. Luke?
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, Alice, I came sort of full circle in this, and that came from a pro sport background into sort of general population fitness. And for me, it's being able to give like the sort of like the everyman or the everywoman sort of access to something that they didn't quite have access to before. Which I think is kind of what you were touching on, where allowing people to understand that there's a little bit more to it than just go in and get sweaty and you know, get tired. It's actually, you can improve people's quality of life, and I think that's something that we're quite fortunate to be able to be involved with.
I definitely think that the byproduct of everyone trying is health, and that's a good thing, whether or not there's any negatives along the way. We're all going to get healthier doing it.
Absolutely. So I think something that you're probably all sat here thinking about is goals, and it's something that I think comes up a lot on social media, and just generally we're goal-driven people. We always have an end goal, be that 10 pull-ups, be that you know, whatever it is. We're generally a goal-driven society, and I think that within fitness, the one thing that I get asked most is, you know, I'm struggling to achieve my goals, or how do I achieve my goals? And so I wanted to pitch to these guys, you know, working in the industry, what do you think is the one thing that holds people back from achieving their goals that you tend to see? Because for me and my clients, it's not necessarily, well, it could be a whole host of different things, but I wondered what's the most common thing that you see that holds people back from achieving their goals?
Really, it's the goal's got to be tangible. The biggest kind of slice of the pie in our industry, really, unfortunately, I think, is the sort of world of aesthetics, and I want to look better, or I want to look hot, or whatever. But whenever that, you know, you can't really qualify when that goal's achieved. You know, there's no like how, you know, I want to look better, or how better is better when you've done it. When is it actually done? So if you can't qualify what a goal actually is, then there's always going to be this sense of I've never quite reached it. You know, as both of you guys know, what I tend to do with people who I work with is we make that something real. You know, we give you a real goal and say, you know, we want to do a 100-kilo deadlift, or we want to do like 10 pull-ups, whatever it might be. The aesthetic goals will come along with that. You know, when you've got fit enough and strong enough to do the performance goal that we've set you, then you know, the aesthetics just come along as a nice little benefit.
I think that, you know, that's the great thing about having professionals like you as an employer of professionals, and as a person who's, you know, now I have to, you know, when I'm building gyms, it's not just about having a nice bathrooms with a selfie mirror. You have to think about the people that are in there. Well, no, I never mind.
That
I've
is
got it
really
down.
important too.
Yeah, but the point of that is that I think this thing about, you know, a lot of what the non-responsible media people write about is this problem with aesthetics and the problems with performance, which defines exercise and training. So we all exercise, but not many of us are training. And I think, you know, there's a kind of snobbery in training that comes along with, well, if your goals are purely aesthetic, then, you know, you should probably take a back step and really, you know, so when you're starting to get into, you know, things like PRI and all those things, you've already committed a lot of time and motivation to that. So there's no, when people come to me and say, right, well, what's the big goal for most people? It's like, get them to understand the numbers, and that might be body composition to start with. In fact, I have to go with body composition quite a lot, because if you're not got enough muscle versus body fat, whether that's aesthetic or performance related, you can't do the things that you might want to do, let alone look good. So whether it's a big thing about like whether you look good or whether you've got more muscle versus body fat, or whether you then want to use that muscle to perform tasks, it will all come down to a number, and that number is, as you said, is entirely individual. You can't make it up. You have to go and find out what your stats are, find out how you functionally move, find out how, once you've done that functional movement, how you can apply that to improve, you know, those first numbers.
Okay.
That would be it for me.
What would yours be?
I think it's like yourselves, so, and it's not understanding why you're setting yourself that goal. So if your goal, for me, I found that I spent a lot of my life thinking, do you know what, I want to weigh 3 kilos lighter. But why? Like, why did I need to lose 3 kilos? Actually, I really didn't. What I've now realised is that I really want to gain more strength. And so when I started working with Luke, I switched my goals, and I was like, right, what do I want to be able to do? I want to be able to do pull-ups, and I want to be able to hold my own body weight. And do you know what? By taking the pressure off and putting my goal into something positive, I can now do my pull-ups, although I haven't done 10 yet, but I'm up to 6 or 7, which I'm really proud of. But also then the weight that you thought that you needed to lose would naturally come off anyway. So I think it's, understanding, setting goals and knowing why you're setting them, not just setting them for the sake of it because you feel the pressure that, you know, you should weigh this certain amount, because nobody has like a set figure that they should weigh.
Yeah, it's how you're composed to do the things you want to do.
So
It just helps to understand the number.
I think for me, like, I agree with a lot of what you guys have said. I have to say, I think something that stops people from achieving their goals mainly is lack of self-belief. I think honestly sometimes when I have clients that come into the gym, they're so afraid of failure to be able to do stuff that they it's almost that holds them back from just throwing themselves into a task. And it's so what if you fail? You know, there's been so many times when, you know, I'm in the gym and I've done things and I've messed up, or I've done things wrong, or you know, it's taken me ages to learn how to properly do things. We're never going to be an expert overnight, and I think that's something that we all need to learn, is that you're right, Johnny, there is a lot of snobbery in training. I think sometimes when you go into the gym, and especially as a woman, when I first started training, entering the weight section and, you know, knowing how to do things was often like a massively intimidating task. But I did it and I stuck with it, and yes, I probably looked like an idiot when I first started training because I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I literally just went off things online. I had the most old-fashioned strength training book you've ever seen in your life. I think it's about 25.
Probably still the best one, to be honest.
It's probably about 25 years old, but I read it and it taught me how to chest press and it taught me how to do those things. And yeah, okay, I wasn't an expert, and I failed a lot of times, but I learned and I went with that and I continued and I didn't give up. And I think so often, you know, we'll go and we might not necessarily achieve, you know, 10 pull-ups, that these big goals that seem quite far away. But, you know, you went and you did something and you worked on it, and that one session is going to get you a little bit closer. You might not necessarily be there that week, but you'll be there in 3 months, or you'll be there in 6 months. So I think just having a little bit of self-belief is often what can help you to just cross that bridge of, you know, you've gone to the gym 3 times this week, but actually next week you're feeling a little bit disheartened because, I don't know, for whatever reason, just stick with it. Like, have that little bit of self-belief that actually, if you consistency is key. I'm going to touch on that in a second.
Can I fill you up? That's the quote my rugby teacher when I was 21, when I started fitness in Australia. I was coaching rugby to kids, and my rugby coach said to me, he said, evolution, he said, this is what it's all about. He said, evolution has been millions of years of failure to get to where you've got to today.
Exactly.
And that conceptualised it for me, and that's the point I started doing fitness for living.
And we've all failed, and I think that's the best thing. That's how you learn, and that's life. And so it's not about jumping into fitness and being an expert from day one and thinking that, you know, you need to be able to do all of these things. You know, it's not. It's a real learning journey. And my big phrase at the moment is you want to be able to live well for life. You want to be able to move when you're like 90 and 100 years old. I want to be able to move, so I'm not going to do crazy things that are going to be detrimental to my body.
What, like it?
You are on this.
I know what the end school.
I'm not going to do crazy things that are going to harm my body, you know, because I want to be able to move for the rest of my life. I want to be able to train for the rest of my life. So, you know, we do make failures, and of course we do, but just have that little self-belief that you can keep going. I'm going to move on, and I'm actually going to continue on to that saying. But for me, a real saying that has rung true to me in my own training is that consistency of effort is far greater than intensity of effort. I think overtraining is a massive thing that we've all kind of become accustomed to now, and with the, you know, with the kind of increase of things like social media, for example. So we're all here and we're all at a bloggers conference, and social media now shows people training every hour of every day. If you wanted to, you could follow every blogger in the world, and you constantly get X, Y, and Z fitness videos through your feed, and it feels as though everyone is exercising all the time. And for me, I think that can have a negative effect. I don't want to sit here and have any negative vibes at all, but I think that can be negative sometimes, because you can feel like it's an overwhelming pressure to constantly feel as though you need to train. So I wanted to hear your thoughts on that saying, and whether you agree with it, and how you approach kind of that, I guess, getting people to have a realistic approach to their training.
Yeah. Well, when realistic's the key word in that. When you said, do I wholeheartedly agree with its consistency over intensity? The answer to that with most of these questions really is it depends. There's a time when intensity has to be high, and there's a time when it has to not be high. But if you have an overall plan, and you have an overall understanding of, in this week, this is the amount of work I'm prepared to do, this is the amount of time I'm prepared to commit, I have other things I want to do with my life too, but this is the time I've set aside for my training, and then you're able to understand this amount of it is going to be high intensity work, this amount of it is going to be more restorative type work. That's absolutely fine. You don't have to turn the dial to 100 every single time you step foot in the gym. So it doesn't, you know, as long as you have an appreciation of when intensity has to be increased and when it has to be dialed back, then there's nothing wrong with people kind of going, you know, full foot on the gas, but they just have to understand that there will be a point in their week or a point in their life when they have to take it off.
Do you want to explain that in context to Amy's situation? Because I hope Amy doesn't mind me using.
Hi guys.
I hope Amy doesn't mind me using her as an example, but I think this is a really interesting case study that you can all learn from. So I know a little bit about Amy's story, but Amy came to Luke how many months ago now? I don't know, like a year ago? No.
So you probably I would totally forgive you for assuming that because of the job title I have that I should get everything right. I absolutely do not. I'm just like anyone else, I get a lot of things wrong, and for a long time I thought everything had to be harder, faster, and I did HIIT training after HIIT training, and I'm not sitting here and being negative about HIIT training, but it was the only thing I was doing, because I became obsessed with this one thing. It was that one thing that was going to change my body, and it was going to get me like extremely fit. And so I was training in third space, and Luke had obviously clocked me across the gym, and she's, you know, the girl doing Kayla and then doing burpees on and off a bench, and like, you know, going from this to that 100 miles an hour. And I ended up having a session with Luke, and I walked into this session and I was like, hey, and he just kind of stood there and looked at me, and I was like, I've just spoken to him and he hasn't even responded. And he was like, hi. And I was like, so right, basically what I want to do in the next 4 weeks is I want to do this, this, and this. And I was just stood there, and as I was standing there, Luke was just kind of taking it all in, and I was like this. And he was like, looking at me. And then, and I said, what's going on? And he went, I can tell you're like hyper stressed. I was like, stressed? I'm not stressed. And then my face was all screwed up, and he was like, your feet aren't even flat on the floor. He was like, you look like you're about to have a fight. And I was like, oh my God, absolutely not. I've just come from work and I'm just having a really busy day. And he was like, yeah, cool. And that's when we started to work together. And so the first 4 weeks I went and I started doing sessions with Luke, and I let him explain what we do. But in this 4 weeks I went to the gym, and And I kept saying to people at work, I was like, so I've got this new trainer, and I swear to God, all we're doing is lifting heavy and breathing. I'm not sure he like totally gets where I'm going. And then I went for a session on the Friday, and I will never forget it because I was kneeling on the floor, and we were doing this exercise, and I was suddenly like, he was like, "You all right?" And I was like, "No, I think I'm gonna cry." And then I spent the whole weekend exhausted and emotional, which wasn't great because I was actually at my boyfriend's mum's house, and we've only been going out just over a year, so great impression. But she's very lovely and made me loads of nice food. But anyway, and so I spent this whole weekend, and then finally on the Sunday night, I had the best night's sleep that I've had in 2.5 years. And I woke up and I was like, I had 8 hours last night. Not even 8 hours actually. I had 7 hours. I didn't even wake up. And I messaged Luke, and he was like, "That's because it's finally working." And so over to you to explain what we do.
Well, Amy was, without kind of, Amy's not by no means commonplace or generic. But what I saw with Amy was something I see with lots and lots of clients, lots of female clients too, who do seem to have this need to onboard absolutely everything. Amy will try and help everyone. She'll try and answer every email. She'll try and answer every text message. She'll try and do it all. But sometimes you can't. Sometimes there has to be some room for yourself. Sometimes there has to be some room just to kind of just be there and be present in whatever it is that you're doing. And the sort of the technical side of what I do with Amy is probably not for sort of this setting, because that can, we can talk about that for weeks. But what the real the nuts and bolts of what we were trying to do was actually get her to be present in the training session. So at the time I was seeing Amy for an hour 3 times a week. But what we started to insist on is that for the hour that Amy was with me, that she was with me, and that she wasn't, Instagramming or answering work emails or whatever else she was doing. That she actually took that time to disengage from everything else that was going on in the outside world and actually be present in what she was doing. There were various kind of techniques. Some were psychological, some were sort of, as I mentioned, these sort of breathing techniques, and some were purely just talking and creating a relationship, so that she was able to do that. But what it meant was that she was then in a place where she could be receptive to what we were doing, and she could start to take some time to understand what we were doing, take some time to do things properly, if that makes sense, without doing a disservice to what you were doing before. What we really did was strip everything right back and said, well, if you're doing all of this in a week, you're doing, whatever you're doing, your 5 Barry's classes and your this class and that class, and it was all, it was everywhere. So we stripped it all out, and so what do we really need to do? So we need to make you strong, and we need to get you to kind of think about how you do things. And a big kind of sort of pillar that I build everything on is it's not what you do, it's how you do it. So we put a lot of focus on making sure that she moves well, making sure that she addressed her technique, making sure that she understood the principles of why she needed to do every exercise that we did. And it's a bit of an aside, but that's something that I insist on with every trainer that works sort of alongside me at Third Space, and we might have a sort of similar remit in that sense. When it comes to people creating training programs, a trainer should be able to answer the question of why an exercise is there. If they can't answer the question of why it's there, then it shouldn't be there. You should be able to qualify why you're asking a client to do anything. So with Amy, what we actually did was take a load of stuff out. We got her to do a lot less work, but a lot more quality work, and got her to be really present in that hour. So we actually just gave her a break from life for 3 hours a week.
Great. But I think what's really important to say is that didn't stop you from achieving things, and that didn't change. Amy didn't suddenly, become this different person, physique-wise. Just because she stopped doing all that HIIT. In fact, I think you'd be the first to admit that your physique has actually got better.
Definitely.
By stripping it.
Early days, you used to come in and God knows you were doing so many things a day. Do you remember when you started? It was like, gee, I couldn't keep up with it.
I think the biggest realisation out of it all is your fitness life is part of your whole life. So when you go into a gym, you're not living this totally different life. It really does impact everything outside, and everything outside impacts what you do in the gym. So I was very much always So I was like living my life on adrenaline and cortisol, and so when I kind of took that all away, and we've now started to make me structurally strong, and I breathe properly, so my ribs aren't flared, and you know I don't look like I'm going to beat someone up all the time, which is great. Actually, I'm now in my hour. Every rep counts. So the weightlifting's really helped. I'm not adding more stress to my body when I'm I have been quite a stressed person, and I can actually control what I do, right?
Yeah.
And I'm breathing properly,
Yeah.
which is great.
Yeah, but it sounds silly, but it's pretty important.
Yeah.
You know, without it, you're gonna die. So yeah, we needed to make sure that you could do that without it being a stressful activity. It should be quite a natural, easy, resistance-free thing to do. You know, we do it 20,000 times a day. You know, when people are stressed and wired and constantly on, it becomes just that simple activity becomes hard work. And that was, you know, Amy was quite a classic example of that, where every single thing she did was done with such intensity, even breathing.
And I think the take home for you guys, and something that I really want to kind of put across, is that it doesn't have to be high intensity. It doesn't have to be
all the time.
It doesn't have to be sweating bucket. It doesn't have to be going hell for leather every single gym session, and it doesn't have to be every single day of the week to be training well. Okay, it has to be realistic for you, and it has to fit into your abilities, and it has to fit into your lifestyle. So Amy has a lifestyle which is incredibly stressful, and she might only get that sort of like hot hour to train, and in that time she doesn't want to be already stressed and then elevate the stress levels even more by doing a really intense gym session and then leaving and never dialing down, and then getting to the end of the day and thinking, why can't I sleep at night? Why can't I actually calm myself down? Why am I feeling as though I'm constantly running on empty? You know, it's taking a step back and realising that, you know, a lot of the time we can do just fine on just being consistent with our training. Some days you might have a really good session, some days it might just be that you show up and you do a couple of bits, and that's fine too. But it's not about that constant intensity, and I think Luke's right in saying choose when you have that intensity. Choose those times well. If you're on a weekend, you've had a really good night's sleep, and you're feeling like you've got loads of energy in the tank, be my guest to go and train really, really hard and crack into that intensity. But you know, if you're midweek, you haven't eaten properly, or you're having a really stressful time, you're tired, you're moody, just don't. Just know that that's not the time to really crack up that dial, because it's only going to affect you when you step out of the gym. Like the gym can be a saviour for some people, but also it can also leave you in that state of constantly feeling stressed and with those elevated stress levels. So
yeah, well, that kind of comes back to your point on goals and goal setting as well. If you're taking as a trainer, if you're taking a case on, you have to have a bit of a sort of long-term view with that person and understand that this is where we are now, this is where we want to get to. So every session that we do is part of that process, is a little step along the way. So if you come through the door and it's like, I feel like shit, I've had a big fight with my significant other, and I'm like, and I haven't.
We might do that later.
And I'm not feeling it. That's fine, but we're still ticking off some boxes on the way towards that final goal. And as long as that client can then leave that session and think, yeah, it wasn't the best session I've ever done, but I'm one step closer.
yeah.
I mean, I think the one great takeaway is try and do a press up really slowly, and then tell me how you feel versus doing 5 quick ones. Intensity, there's a big thing in the US called low intensity interval training, which is effectively, I talk about time under tension in mine, because it's the easiest way I can get intensity across to people. The plank is hard and you're not moving, right? The reason the plank's hard and you're not moving is because you're contracted. Do a very slow movement, which allows you to do all sorts of other things that Luke can tell you about, like getting in touch with your body neurokinetically and all that stuff. But really slowly, it's much harder than doing 10 fast. Do it slowly, and that's more intense. So it's low intensity interval training for me, just doing things slowly and carefully.
Yeah, I think the biggest takeaway is that, you know, we're in a generation where like fitness is unlimited, but it doesn't mean you have to be exercising every day. And I think that was my biggest thing. And it's like, how do I feel on that day? Like we very much, like Luke doesn't put a set weight that I have to lift on my program, because he's like, it really depends on how you're feeling. Like some days you might be really tired, and so actually the amount of weight that you can lift is less than when you're not feeling tired, or like if you're on your period, that can totally change. Totally
Johnny.
stress look. But yeah, so I don't know, I think it's taking the pressure off and doing what's right?
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to what, having that long-term view that if you have a bad week of training, that's just 1 week in however many weeks there are in that year and in the next few years. So it's really, in the grand scheme of things, not going to be a bad thing. Moving on, that was a long one, sorry. I wanted to talk about recovery. So I think recovery is something that a lot of people are acknowledging as a really, really important thing now. And it's no longer just what you do in the gym, but what you're doing around that training that is now being picked up by the media, by a lot of people, and also by trainers encouraging it of their clients. I'm the first person to say, and in my program I've got a whole thing on get in, foam roll, and it lists each individual body part, which I love. But I wanted to throw the question out there and say, how do you personally recover from your training, and what do you generally advise, and what do you think is best?
I think this is one of those areas that everyone talks about active recovery now. So the idea of not moving is not a good idea. But if scratch all that, really what it comes down to is that you've got to do your training or your exercise, you've got to do your life stuff, and then you've got to eat well and all that sort of stuff, and then you've got to do this thing called recovery. So what we're really adding to the list of things that you guys need to do to be like all those people that everyone wants to be like is add more time into an already compressed world. So I tend to like to do my recovery when I'm training, which comes back to why this man here is so good at what he does, is because actually, let's talk about supersets. So if you do a squat, and then you get down on the floor and do, say, a big lunge sprinter stretch with a big twisting motion in it, your heart rate is still going up, okay? So you're still getting a big cardiovascular return on what is traditionally a weights exercise, but you're also increasing your mobility during your weight training session. So when you come to do your next set of squats, they're actually improved over your first one. So if you haven't got time to do recovery, and foam rolling is the last thing on the list of stuff that you've got to do, foam roll, then do it while you train. Build it into your program. Just doing a whole load of squats and then doing some box jumps afterwards, which you'll get at a sort of, not to be named sort of session in a 40 group sort of scenario, isn't going. I'm not allowed to say stuff like that.
Positivity, Johnny. Come on.
But if you incorporate it, like active stretching, doing slow movement lunges, animal flow. I've got into animal. I'm so stiff and my posture's terrible for years of playing rugby and being generally not very stretchy. But I'll do it in there. I'll incorporate it as my superset rather than doing something interval based. That's how I do it. Well, I like the lizard walk. It's basically lying on the floor.
What's yours, Amy?
I do mine on Netflix.
That's
I don't know.
The same thing, by the way.
I don't know. I think it's just going back to the whole thing. I'm not a professional athlete. I'm just training for life, and to be honest with you, I do foam roll at the beginning with Luke, but that's more so that I really hope I'm right about this, but I foam roll at the beginning of my sessions so that to help me forget what's happened before starting my workout, so that after that 5 minutes of foam rolling, I'm not thinking about my inbox, I'm not thinking about what's going on Instagram, I'm there in the moment, and so it kind of calms my body down. And then the rest of it I do at home, sat on the sofa, because I always used to think that you have to be out doing something, or you have to do a yoga class, but you don't have to do anything. And actually, I'm really into designated survivor at the moment, so my recovery is sitting on the sofa and just enjoying watching some telly and not moving.
Good.
Yeah, well, Amy's got it spot on. It's recovery, well, as you were saying as well, recovery shouldn't be just like another task that we have to accomplish. It's we can overthink and overcomplicate that. It's really understanding, again, kind of harking back to the same point, across your whole training week or your training month or your training year or whatever it might be, there's got to be some downtime, whether that's watching Netflix or whether it's walking your dog in the park or whether it's whatever. There has to be some time away from, foot down, I'm going at it in fifth gear every time. It can, whatever recovery modality people want to use, then, whether it's, you know, people go in for massages, or people go and do a yoga session, or they meditate, or whatever it might be. That's all cool. It's all completely up to you. It's just understanding that you have to. There has to be some time when you're not going full tilt. If it's seen as another task you have to accomplish, people just won't do it.
So if you're all going to go home and chill on your sofas, you have our permission to just sit and do nothing. That is your recovery, and you should enjoy it just as much as you do your training. I'm really pleased that people are starting to acknowledge that there's more to training and to fitness than just the aesthetics. I think that's something that when I personally started, it was so aesthetically driven, and everyone was posting their selfies, and everyone was just like, this is fitness, I've got abs, this is me. And I think now, and I definitely got an appreciation for the fact that there's so much more to fitness than just the way you look. In fact, it's the last thing on my list of my training and my approach to fitness and my approach with my clients. And so I wanted to ask, you guys have been in the industry a long time, no offence, I'm not saying your ages, but you've been in the industry, you've seen a lot come and go and trends and stuff. Have you noticed a shift in, I would say what was a very results-driven, aesthetically driven industry? Have you noticed a shift away from that to a more holistic kind of approach? Or do
the answer to this is the one that I think the most interesting, and this is where I come from a similar background as you. I'm not as qualified as you are, but because I've got into a business of where I've got to make some money, it's a business fitness, and I build gyms and I design corporate healthcare things and I do all of those sorts of things, and you have to make money in order for these things to exist. Okay, so that's the paradox I face every day. In my particular world, and a lot of that means you have to harness what people want, and what people want tends to be what they look good at doing. What they need tends to be much more related to this thing that I have developed as my thing when I build gyms, which is strength and conditioning. Strength and conditioning training, this bag's got it, lifting heavy things, lifting them well.
And eating peanut butter.
Yeah, sorry, and being a boss, yeah, which is what I am. So I'm great. So strength training, there's a point to this. Strength and conditioning training was what all people. I'm not going to the Balance Festival this year because I'm going to Body Power. And the reason I'm going to Body Power, which is full of blokes like this and ripped t-shirts and everything that we detest in this room, is because they used to do gymnasiums, which was a Greek word for people, blokes hanging out naked actually, in gyms lifting weights. It's been around for millennia. People doing strength training, and they are bodybuilders, and it's a horrible aesthetic industry. But what I've noticed is that in the 20 years I've been doing it, roughly speaking, there's been cycles of cardiovascular weight training. The principles behind bodybuilding, i.e. strengthening your body, have always maintained themselves. Now, it's whether or not you want to take with that as, the aesthetics part of bodybuilding, or lifting weights to strengthen your body so that you mentally feel strong or physically are strong, is what will consistently come back to. I think the HIIT, right? I think that we talked about HIIT. I think the running about and going from class to class to class is fab, but it's not measurable. Weight training and strength training gives you something to be able to be tangible. You can feel the number, you can see the numbers, you can see numbers progressing on the scales if that's what your thing is, or on the numbers of reps that you do. But ultimately, strength training is the thing that it will come down to. Strength and conditioning training. Whether you want to think of it as body power or whether you want to think of it as human movement or functional movement, it's picking up heavy things and moving them. And that's, for me, in 20 years, it always comes back to that.
Okay. Luke, what do you think?
To be honest, I completely agree with that. And my experience is general fitness and elite sport, and back to general fitness, and they are the consistent things that exist in every paradigm. Is whatever you want to do, whether it's I want to look better, or I want to run faster, or I want to jump higher, being stronger is the cornerstone of all of that. It's all you. If you want to jump higher, you just need to be able to produce more force into the floor, which means you need to be stronger. If you want to, look better, you need to move more. If you're going to move more, you need to be able to not get hurt. In order to not get hurt, you need to be strong enough to deal with the movements that you're going to do. It all comes down to the same thing, really. People need to get better at moving, and they need to be able to produce more force when they move. Whether that's because they don't want their knees to hurt when they go and do the marathon, whatever it is, next week.
Next Sunday.
Next Sunday. Those guys need to be strong.
I'm gonna slightly disagree with you both, but I agree with you. I agree with strength training. I personally do it, and that means that I think it's a great thing. However, I agree with people just moving their body in a way that they enjoy.
But you weigh something. That, I agree with that, but that you do weigh it. That's why calisthenics has come back.
I think, yeah, I think, you know, I think whether that is going to a class, if that makes you just move your body and you enjoy it, so I'm not going to name any class names, but I go and do them, and I'll be the first to put my hands up and say I do, because sometimes I really, really cannot be bothered to train, and it is a commitment to myself that I'm like, if I book onto a class, it's going and just moving my body, and I'm exercising, and I feel great afterwards. I know that strength training, yes, it is at the core of everything that I do, and that's how I train my own clients. However, when we're looking at just getting people to be active and to move, I sometimes then, you know, like you said, you can, yeah, it's trying. It just comes back to, yes, we can sometimes know what's better and what's great, and you know, whilst I have a great appreciation for strength training, I also have an appreciation for anyone that just gets up and goes to move their body and is active in whatever way they enjoy and that they can stick to, and that is adherable. And for me, as a PT, adherence to anything is at the core of what I do. If someone can't stick to something, why the hell are they doing it? If they can't stick to something if they can only stick to something for 6 weeks, that's great, but what are they going to do for the next 5 years of their life? You know, if they enjoy something for a short period of time, that's fine, but what happens then next? Do they just stop and then do nothing? If you can give someone whatever you want to give, if I can give them a program, or if that means saying that they go and do a Barry's, or, you know, I'm not going to name classes, but, you know, I just did. Sorry. But, you know, if someone wants to go and do that, then if that's how they can stick to staying active, and if they enjoy it, then for me, that's...
You said you asked about what's been faddy, and I think you're exactly right, but I think the thing that people can do consistently, you know, BBC Thursday night, as an 89-year-old dude on BBC News, doing his sprints after he's done his deadlifts, because do you know why? When he was asked why, I want to get laid more. 89 years old.
How did I miss that?
That's general television, folks, not me. But I think you're exactly right.
Yeah.
Sorry, I may have misunderstood the question. I think the thing that's consistent over time, in my experience, has been strength training. People go off and do things like Barry's. I don't know why you said that, but that's, and then they can do that. I totally agree. But
I actually hate
if you
Barry's.
wanted to do
something, I can't run.
But if you were asking for my experience, and then on top of that my advice to people, it would be that something that they will consistently do for life that will have the tangible things that they affect. That would be for me strength training. I wouldn't try and do other things if I was going to advise a trainer, and if I was hiring trainers to come into my spaces, again, I would look for a base in strength and conditioning. Not necessarily as the thing they end up teaching, they might end up teaching boxing, but a knowledge in strength and conditioning, functional movement, doing those things would be it. Because that's consistently what will give people the results.
No, and I agree. But also I think sometimes if you don't have access to a PT, if you can't kind of get your head around, you know, for a lot of people, going into the gym and just doing a deadlift is a massively daunting task. And if you don't have the ability to afford a PT, and you don't have the ability to be able to be coached through that movement, which a lot of people actually do need, and I'd much rather someone go to a class and do a movement safely than they do something dangerously in the gym that they're not physically able to do. But yeah, no, good discussion.
Yeah, I mean, that comes back to a point that one of us made right at the start, which was you have to understand that you have to give people a bit of what they want and then a bit of what they need. And sometimes it's a case of like sneaking what they need in.
Yes.
So let do all the stuff that you want to do, but you know, while you're not looking, you're going to be doing some of this too.
And they go, oh, I've lost so much. Oh yeah, really?
Those hip thrusts in my program. Little bit. Cool. I am going to touch on the fact that we are here for a bloggers conference. And so I think it's really, really important that we do discuss the role of bloggers within the fitness industry, and I think it's a very frank topic that we need to have. And I'm very, very happy for people to chip in as well from the audience if you want to have your say. But I just wanted to touch on each of your opinions on what blogging and what fitness bloggers have done to an industry that you've already spent a lot of time in, and what are your opinions on it? Amy, do you want to kick off?
I said this earlier on actually, I think it's one of the most exciting times for fitness and for content that we're in. But I think it's also one of the times when we all just have to be really responsible about what content we put out. So I mentioned earlier on, it's just it's brilliant that you can inspire people to move, but just make sure that you're not giving out an expert opinion if you haven't got the skill set to back that up. As a brand though, we are daily inspired by the fitness industry. I mean, we've, in the past year or so, obviously we had Kayla Atsinas on the front cover. I've done so much with her in digital. We had the lovely Alice on the cover. And it's brilliant that you guys are helping to spread the message of living the healthy lifestyle, because actually the people that are in this room today are, you know, from face value, are all look fit and healthy. However, we're very much a London bubble, and when you start to look at government statistics about how many people in this country aren't hitting the minimum like cardio requirements per week, and I think it's about 20 minutes per day that you just need to be active, and the stats around that are terrifying, and the fact that obesity is going up is terrifying. So actually we really do need to get the message out there. We just need to get the right message out. So I think if everybody's part of that and does it in the right way, then I think
acknowledges the responsibility.
yeah, everyone has a brilliant role to play in it.
The other side of that coin though is that like the thing is, so we're coming back to the recovery question actually, is that if you're not doing fitness, do you really want to be reading about fitness? And the problem is we have the thing in our hand all the time. I do it all the time. I've been reading fitness articles. I was up last night, so for lots of different reasons, but I was up last night reading related to looking after a baby, not drinking. I wish I didn't allowed to, but reading articles on stuff I know. I just downloading stuff on Facebook and reading. You know, the danger, of course, of a lot of content is that the more we read it and the more we ask for it, the more gets produced, and that's when you get into dangers of, well, do you know what? I'm not that qualified, but I'm going to get paid to do this, so I'm going to pump it out. So if we read it, it's there. You know, it's that kind of, oh, if we'll buy it, people will sell it. So I think the danger is actually, for me, it's feedback. What we need as an industry provider personally is rather than just accepting the content and it being facelessly read, is people, you know, we've all got blogs here. I've got blogs and things. It's just start getting like the lack of. I mean, it's probably because I'm not read very much actually, ironically, but comment, give it back, feedback, comment on this stuff, write into. You probably get lots of letters and stuff, but you know, again, I was with a very well-known newspaper today, the woman who's responsible for writing the piece on our industry. She's lost 10 kilos of weight herself, who hates our industry, hasn't received, after a piece of data that was sent out asking for feedback, hasn't received one letter from the public asking about what their opinion is for what she wanted to write. Not one. And this is a national broadsheet newspaper, because people are reading it and then not. We've got to interact with one another. I provide fitness, but it might be totally wrong what I'm providing.
Quickly, because I want people to ask questions, okay. So quickly.
Yeah, well, much along the same lines, really. I mean, there has to also be an understanding that there's a very big difference between someone being able to do something themselves or looking fantastic themselves, and then being able to instruct someone else on how to do that.
Amen.
So just because someone's got lots of awesome pictures of themselves looking hot doesn't necessarily mean that they can make lots of other people look hot and do it safely. The same as if someone can show them, you know, deadlifting a house. You know, they don't necessarily mean they can teach someone else how to do it. So I do think there is. I think it's fantastic that there are, you know, people with 500,000 followers can put a message out there and it will get read by the whole bloody country. That's fantastic. What I do think, it has to be a certain amount of accountability within that, which is just why I like working with Alice, because she will come to me with, I'm going to put this out there. Is that factually correct?
I show Luke all my videos.
And then you know we'll debate it. So yeah, well, it might not perfectly fit my own personal beliefs, but there's nothing dangerous or inherently wrong in there. So go for it. If you're going to, you know, Alice is going to inspire a lot more people to move than I ever will.
And I think that comes down to the acknowledgement of there is a lot of responsibility that comes with anything that you post online, and whether that's nutrition, whether that's fitness, whether that's whatever you're going to put out there. If you want to be putting that content out there with the ambition to inspire people, just be aware of the responsibility that comes with that, and be open to
Jamie Oliver this week.
Yeah, and be
when
open
he put
to
his baby on the floor, and he obviously just put his baby on the floor for a minute. His baby's very, very cute, and he was like, "I'll take a picture of my beautiful baby," and then it's all over the Daily Mail because the baby was put on a hard floor.
Do ask your professionals questions. Do feedback. Ask them why they said it.
So now, without further ado, I think as much I had so many questions I wanted to ask, but we seem to have talked forever. I did want to open the floor to any questions. So. these people are massive experts in their field, so do take the opportunity to, if you have any, ask any training questions or anything you want. Yeah, just any questions, hands up, and I will choose. John, you've got a question?
Yes. So coming back to the gym after an injury, so that's been really struggled doing deadlifts. So I had my back classic, in the lower muscle in my back, and going back to deadlifts, I'm hesitant to do it. Going back to the weight, building up.
I've never put my legs in the splits. If I try, it's going to hurt, or if I'm going to get close, it's going to hurt because my brain's going to say, "How are you doing? Why do you need to do that?" So it's going to try and get me to stop it. So the fact that you've hurt yourself doing that movement before, you're kind of now got this little hardwiring problem of every time you do that, you're going to have an anticipation of pain, and it's going to affect the way you do it. Deadlifting shouldn't hurt your back. Deadlifting done correctly makes your back healthier, not weaker. To answer the real question, you need to get someone to take you through the technique that you're trying to work on and make sure that eventually you're doing what you are intending to do and what you think you're doing, rather than something that might look similar but is a little bit different.
I think it's really important that with those movements, that if they are great exercises, and everyone acknowledges that squats, deadlifts, presses, they're all really, really good exercises. Sometimes if you are experiencing pain, do just ask for help. I think that's the first thing that I did, was just to say, I'm not an expert and I actually don't think I'm doing this right. I'm actually feeling pain when I'm squatting. Can I get some help? I'm not saying that means you have to invest in 12 PT sessions, but even just one, just to make sure that those fundamental core movements of your strength training program or whatever you're doing are healthy and are safe. That's a really, really good investment and something that I would definitely recommend.
Also, that's what gym instructors are there to do. Like, that's why you have a gym instructor level 2, and they're all around a gym. They're not just there to pick up weights that people can't be bothered to put away. Which they have to spend a lot of the time doing, but they're there to help, and
But just if you've actually specifically had an injury that you know you've had, which is you do go to physio or a scan it. But because even if you do it properly, and nowadays you can walk into most physio places and they'll ultrasound it, or the backs are a bit difficult, but you can just go. It's the least money you'll spend is getting it properly looked at by someone who's got a qualification to do it and getting a picture.
Question there. Sorry, Johnny, I'm going to keep going.
I was going to say, you put up a video the other day doing a lunge and holding a dumbbell.
Yes.
Yes.
We need to address this without going into too much detail, because honestly, Luke could probably go for hours talking about this subject. Why did we do that lunge that way? There's two things. So one was the fact that I didn't have shoes on, and two was the fact that it looked like I was slightly bent. For those of you that haven't seen it, I was slightly tilting my torso forwards in the lunge movement.
There were two. I might get you to do it. Actually, it might be easier.
My feet are gross.
Yeah. There were a few things that were going on. So yeah, go on, do it. Take your shoes off and do it.
Take my shoes off.
Yeah.
So number one.
Don't worry, we won't judge.
Well, I did get a pedicure, but chins straight away because I'm constantly running around. Right. So weight here.
Yeah. The weight was here. When Alice, if people who can see from the side can see, she starts
there.
So she starts there.
Anterior pelvic tilt.
Yeah, which is a classic.
Ribs and extension.
Yeah, that's a classic. Well, one female position and two ex-dancer position. So she's starting kind of like 10 meters behind the start line, if that makes sense. So her load's
going. To go into a lunge, how I would typically do it, I'd be there, back, like right into that anterior pelvic tilt.
That's also how most people are taught to do it as well. It's like everything's got to be bolt upright, whereas actually everything's got to be individual to the person that you're coaching. With Alice, she's starting kind of 10 meters behind the start line, so she's got a long way to go. She can flex a long way before she starts to actually bend forwards. So what people were observing on that video was, it looks like she was forward bending or forward flexing. She was flexing to neutral. She wasn't flexing to flexion.
So that is for the healthier spine position and thorax position, so my thoracic part of my body, instead of actually throwing myself into extension for the entire movement.
So we got her neutral. Her load had to be in front, which helps her get neutral. If her load was behind, she'd be all over the place. So the weight in that video was in front, which enabled her to slightly flex to get her to neutral and allowed her to get her rib cage in a nice position. she then had to distribute her weight over her working foot. So when she was doing a lunge, if she does one, the leg we're trying to work is the front one, not the back one. So we were trying to organise the weight of Alice plus weight to be over her foot that's working. So she uses that foot to get back up. So if she's pushing off that back leg's not in a nice position to work at all.
Second thing, no shoes.
Yeah, the no shoes was, I don't know if you've got them, they haven't got today. Alice likes to train in like some big spongy things, like.
Because they give me like 2 inches of height.
And she had no idea where she was on the floor. Like she was just feeling air.
It's called, so it's sensing the ground.
Yeah. So we just put her barefoot, which just allowed her to feel where she was. She just got to go full back from the ground to understand. Actually, yeah, my weight is on my front foot, rather than like I can just feel like.
And believe me, people will look at you weirdly when you're barefoot in the gym, but they'll get used to it. And it makes you train some, like I do a lot. We do some stuff, obviously not everything I do barefoot, but some stuff if it's very much specific to lower body training generally, or heavy deadlifts or things like that, I will go barefoot, and I find it a lot better just to feel the ground, feel where my weight is, like in the ground, on the ground.
And that's coming from someone who's a trained dancer who's very kinesthetically aware. So she knows where her body is in space, and she struggled with it. So a lot of people will, especially with sort of shoes that are got like matches in the bottom.
Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
Sorry, behind you.
Oh yeah, behind the pole.
Yeah. So I'm a personal trainer,
Yes.
not a blogger. And one thing that I struggle with at the moment is, and it was really nice to hear you touch on it, is trying to convince my clients that balance training is really important and they're core and doing very basic exercises. How do you, obviously you dealt with that, and lots of people read about HIIT training and doing things quickly. How do you go about trying to convince clients? And one thing I always get them to do is just stand on one leg, shut their eye and see how it goes. And then they do believe me that it is important to work on it. But how do you
Well, just do that. That's work for you.
Yeah, but I find that people want fast-paced training sessions. And do you have any sort of techniques to make it work?
To get people to buy into what you want to do. I typically ask people to give me, I write training programs in 4-week blocks. I ask people to give me 4 weeks, or 30 days, whatever it might be, however you book your sessions or sell your sessions. I ask people, give me 4 weeks, and then let's talk about it. And then I back myself that they will feel better. So if you back yourself that you'll make them feel better and that they will understand that they'll get something out of what you're doing, that's the only way.
Can I add? Oh, sorry, Jenny.
The fact that they've sought you out in the first place means you're on a winner.
Yeah. But also for me, it's about understanding that you are never in life going to be everyone's cup of tea. But if you have your core principles and your core ethos that you have as a trainer, and those are the things that you train every client under. So, for example, Luke, me, Johnny, my ethos is I just want to get people strong, physically, mentally strong. That's at the core of everything I do, and I stick to that ethos, and I want to maintain that throughout everyone that I see. Therefore, there might be people that will come and see me that I am just not right for them because they're just not willing to accept that yet, and that's okay. And it's okay to have a client, as in life, you don't get on with everyone. Everyone isn't your best friend. Your trainer is not necessarily, it's about finding the right trainer for you and the right client, and sometimes that client-trainer relationship just isn't right at that time. It's not to say what you're doing is wrong. You know it's not. You know, because you've done the training, that what you're doing is right. It's just that perhaps for those individual people, they're not willing to be open and to accept what you're wanting to give them. And you shouldn't have to compromise your ethos and your way of training people for your client. You should have that and allow them to either make a decision to come on board, or to say, it's not the right time for me, and we're probably not going to have the best relationship.
You can measure their heart rate. So one really, really quick one, just to answer your question about it, is measure their heart rate doing 5 jumps, and then stop for a bit, and then measure their heart rate doing really, 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 really supersets, or a wall squat, and they will equal around about the same thing over the same period of time, and that will basically show them that their heart rate elevation will probably work in the same mathematics, and that's when you get back to starting to talk about muscles under tension. So that's a really quick win.
Any other questions? Sorry, one more. Yeah.
Hi, so I'm always consistent going to the gym, but there's one thing you picked up earlier that you mentioned about having the headspace to be there within the moment while training. My background is more creative side, so problem solving with like coding and stuff. So basically, my mind for the past few years, I can't find a balance while I'm trying to let go. I even put my phone downstairs, I'm still sort of coming up with problem solving, and I can't be in the moment. I'm training, but I'm not really there, and that comes also with sleeping patterns where it disturbs my sleeping patterns while thinking these things. So, what did you? Because before you spoke about doing the breathing techniques and sort of clearing the mind, how did you sort of come to that sort of structure? What advice?
Where does the knowledge come from, or
both knowledge and also what can you give tips for me, because that's one thing I'm finding really struggling.
what kind of training do you do?
I do many I was basically went from bodybuilding, obviously stopped that, lost a few stones, but now I'm just going more into the health medicine side. That's what I'm trying to get my body fit. That's more my main
Training for life. So the first question first, the science side of that stuff that I do, and that's kind of one strand of what I do, but it actually comes from an institute in the US that I go back and forth.
If you saw my Insta stories on the weekend, I did the first course of what is called, of the people that from America.
So that's a sort of a neurological movement-based science that's a research institute in Nebraska, actually, in the US. But the specific techniques that both these guys use actually at the beginning of their training session are just one part of what they do. But they're little tricks really just to kind of calm the nervous system down. A lot of them are postural related, and without kind of going into too much technical stuff, the part of your brain you have your nervous system that controls what you do. You have one half of that which controls things that you have no conscious control over, your digestive system, your heart rate, etc., etc., etc. And then you have another part which is your sort of fight or flight. I'm ready to have an argument or go and do a heavy deadlift. And there are some techniques that allow you to kind of switch one off in favour of the other. Now the part of your brain that controls this is not in your skull, it's kind of in your upper back. So there are some positional things you can do with people that release pressure on that. So it actually mechanically turns it off, or mechanically stops turning it on. It's probably a more accurate way of describing it. If people are kind of in this extension-driven, Amy when she walked in on her toes for her first session, they're constantly mechanically, which might be, I don't know, I haven't seen you move around. They're constantly mechanically stimulating the part of their brain that says, I'm ready, like I'm problem solving, I'm ready for action.
I'm the opposite, I'm quite more relaxed going and trying to focus on what I'm doing, but when I'm doing my sessions, even when I'm doing my reps, sometimes I feel a bit on because my mind is just going ticking, so I'm not really there.
Well, they would still, I mean, you can be like a mellow guy, but still have a very hard-working central nervous system. Yeah. It doesn't mean that you're an asshole because you have like an active nervous system. It just means you have an active nervous system. You can be pretty chilled, but still have all of this activity going on. So they're little, and it's a difficult thing to kind of to explain across the room for the people. But there are positional things that you can do with people that stop turning that on. They don't necessarily switch it off, but they stop turning it on.
And also even just acknowledging the fact that you are not in the zone when you're training. How are you setting up that transition from your day-to-day life into training, and maybe looking at steps that you can take to get yourself more in the zone? So for example, Amy said she spends 5 minutes foam rolling, in which period she then allows herself to have that 5 minutes of just, okay, this is the time that I'm going to check into what I'm doing, and this is my training time, so I'm going to try and turn off all those other kind of thoughts and feelings about what's going on in the day. It can just be practical things that you can implement. I'm not asking for you to spend hours and hours lying on the floor breathing, but even just 5 minutes of something before you start training to get yourself in that mindset of this is going to be my time to train. It can come down to the music that you listen to. For different people, it can be a whole host of different things, but choosing what's right for you and getting yourself into the right mindset to then go and train might help a little bit, and just putting in some strategic decisions or things that you do before your training that can help you get to that place. We have to wrap up, but I think all of us are going to stick around here for a bit, so if you do have any questions that we didn't answer, please come and ask them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.